you. Uh-huh. We're here in New York on the Deal Disruptor podcast, and spontaneously, Jennifer Hill, who we've only had one Zoom call with, but I bonded with you so deeply. I was like, we have to get in the studio. I'm going in there this afternoon. You flew in from Boston this morning. How are you, my love?
I am magical and miraculous. How are you?
I am good. I feel like New York, I always have this little bit of like, I don't know, anxious energy when I'm here. So I definitely have to do a lot more to calm my nerves because it's just
Frenetic.
a lot. It's a lot. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about your background. What brought you here today to New York, but also your journey? Like I loved your story.
I don't even remember which part I shared with you when we spoke. So I honestly tell people, Ella, I'm like, hi, I'm Jennifer Cahill. I'm a recovering jerk. Nice to meet you. And people are like, what? You spend 2 hours a day in meditation. You're like the furthest thing from a jerk. So if any of you out there are like, hey, I'm a little bit of a jerk too, there's hope for all of us.
I love that.
Because if I can transform it, any of us, I literally say I made Devil Wears Prada look like a pussycat. I once sent an all caps email to my team while I was building my first company, and I didn't know any better. So, you have to have compassion for yourself and let go of the shame and guilt. Know that we were doing the best we could in that moment. And so is everybody else. That's one of my favorite mantras, is that everyone is always doing the best they can in every moment, and that includes you. Well, the best I could do back on that fateful day when I was building my first company was, are you all a bunch of effing morons? Why is everybody not working faster, harder, smarter? And it took me 15 years of deep self-work, compassion to realize every person is just a reflection of us. And so after we exited that company in 2018, actually sold it to a company in New York, then I had the dream life. I got to go to Europe. I spent a year traveling around and then settled. I moved from New York to London to Paris to Lisbon and kind of put my roots down in Lisbon. And this trip is, we're closing a round of funding for our company. So I'm meeting with a lot of investors, lots of masterminding, getting our product out there. So we've now developed a technology called OptiMatch or Om.app that measures motivating factors and can tell you how psychologically safe you're going to feel working with somebody, working with someone as a therapist, working with someone in business. So it's been so much fun. I was like literally on Necker Island last week, setting up what I called Necker dates, where everybody on Necker answered the matching questions. And so then I'd be like, okay, you meet you. And then I'd sit them down and then they'd have the most amazing business conversations while we were on the island.
And let's go back. What was your first company? And talk us through how that came about.
Yeah, so it was funny. It was actually an accident. It was literally an accident. You got to love how just accidents, serendipities, synchronicities, whatever you want to call it, life is just one big happy accident. So how this all started is I left high school when I was 16, went straight to college, and I was about 20 years old and I graduated early. And so I was super excited. And the few years I was in high school, I took all advanced placement classes. So I graduate. I'm very excited. I want to go to law school. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to be an attorney. Thank God, universe, that I was like saved from that. Yeah, protected, divinely protected.
Yeah.
But here's how it showed up. It looked like a nightmare, Ella, because I got a phone call 3 months after I graduated, walked with my class from my school, UC Irvine. Oops, you didn't graduate. You're missing a class from high school, U.S. History 101, and we cannot give you your diploma unless one of two things: you come back to school for a semester, or you take a 2-hour oral exam, pass or fail, with the assistant dean of social sciences on a 1,000-page book on U.S. History 101. All of that led me to my first career, which I was always planning to be an attorney. I couldn't apply for law school because of rollover applications. It was fine. I took the oral exam. I passed it, but they delayed when my diploma really came in, so I couldn't apply for law school that year. So funny story, I put my resume on Monster back in the day. This is like early 2000s. I got 3 job offers. 1, to be an enterprise rent-a-car manager. That could have been my destiny. 2 was to do lending, and I'm grateful I didn't go that route. And 3 was to be a recruiter. And so I started off working for other people, and I quickly realized that my ability to intuit and feel who matched with who was really a gift and a talent. So after, you think you're a hot little piece of SHIT when you're that age. So I'm making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, wildly successful, bringing millions of dollars for the first company I worked for. I was like, I should go be a world thought leader now. And I had no credentials, none, zip, zero, zilch. So I leave my 6-figure year job. Little secret, I epically failed. I went from making like $180,000 one year to $5,000 the next year. So I'm building my first company, which was a consulting company, which I sucked at that time. And then I got invited to come back into recruiting. So I had these business partners who said, please, 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 please come back. Everybody remembers you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went back in recruiting and we didn't align on our values. I worked for them for 3 months and then God bless my ex-husband. He said, why don't you just open your own recruiting firm? And I was like, I don't even know how to do that. My best childhood friend gave me a book called How to Build a Small Business for Dummies. And that was the only business book I had ever read. And then next thing you know, all the people who used to work with me started asking to work with me. Thus, Devil Wears Prada, recovering jerk. I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know how to manage myself. And so fast forward, we built that company up. We got acquired by a subsidiary of Markham LLP. And then my business coach, who helped me realize I was a bit of a jerk, he was instrumental in that and how not to be a jerk. Julian said to me after we sold the last company, he said, Jen, what if we could create an algorithm that mirrors your intuition for matching people? And I didn't come from technology or software. And I was like, wow, that would be pretty rad. So we were off to the races. So it took us 8 months to develop the mathematical formula, another 1.5 years to test it. And we got to an 87% satisfaction rate. And we're still in beta. I mean, we haven't even launched the final product, but people are buying it. People love it. It's great.
And so taking everything that you learned from recruiting and then dipping that into your spirituality and also your intuition, what was kind of like that formulation process of building this algorithm?
All the credit really goes to Julian and Moon, who the three of us sat down like every day for 8 months straight, just developing it and looking at my ability to cold read people, Ella, and to go, what is Ella motivated by? Like if I'm going to cold read you right now I don't think you've answered our matching questions, but let's just say I'm going to cold read you. I would say that one of your motivators is probably get shit done. Like get out there and accomplish, that you're not somebody who dilly-dallies, that you're not afraid to ask for what you want. Well, that's not true of everybody. So I would say that's one of your primary motivators. I would say your secondary motivator is probably having enough information. Like you strike me as somebody who's thoughtful in your decision-making process. And we often see that with CEO and executive types, where they'll either have their highest motivator be facts and information or get shit done. And it's one or the other. And they tend to be great CEOs. And then we have people who are motivated by fun, which I have a feeling you have a little bit of that to some extent, but I don't know if it's your primary motivator. And then the last motivator is other people's needs. And so this is what I was calculating in my head. And then we just kept testing it. And it seems to work. So we actually use it. I use it with coaching clients. There's a crypto company we're consulting with. And when we started with them last year, they were valued at maybe 30 or 40 million. They're now valued at 100 million. We reorganized them using our algorithm.
And talk me through, what did that reorganization look like?
So it was 2 parts. There's something I call, Ella, the golden triangle of connection. It's connection to self, connection to others, and connection to purpose at the top. And so when it comes to the CEOs I work with and so forth, number one is I help them understand themselves. I use a myriad of tools, including our tool, OptiMatch. I'm a huge fan, as we were talking with Walt, who owns the studio earlier, of gene keys, human design, numerology. I incorporate all of it. And so the first step when I start working with someone is to help them understand themselves. Just like I didn't realize I was a jerk years ago, sometimes I can help be that mirror for the CEOs and help them to deepen their work. I teach CEOs self-regulation tools like heart math. I use everything I suggest. I use myself. I love Sedona method, meditation, breath work, all of that, inner child work. So I'll work with the executives on that. Then we look at their connection to others. So what we found was, for example, one of the lead engineers at this particular company we're working with had 22 points variability from the person he was reporting to. Now, it's only a scale of 0 to 40. So 40 is the highest you can get and 0 is the lowest. So most of us can tolerate 5 points above or below our numbers. So say your number's 20, you could tolerate up to 25 or down to 15. In this case, the one person's number was 17 and the other guy's number was 39. So it was creating natural friction. And what's fascinating is Google studied this in 2012. They were really the pioneers in this. Google set out to find out what has teams be successful. We have 38,000 people, 180 teams. What has teams be successful? Turned out, Ella, it wasn't who likes to go out for drinks together, who lives by each other, who's the same age. The number one factor in a team's success is psychological safety. And what we found in our work in studying this over the last 3 years is that if my motivators and your motivators are 5 points, in some cases up to 10 points, we're going to have natural affinity and feel a lot of resonance and psychological safety with one another. However, in the case of these two gentlemen, one of them was 22 points above, or whichever way you look at it, below. And so we accidentally treat each other as though we're misbehaving. We're like, oh, this person's bad or wrong. No, they're just motivated differently. So step one is to help the executives understand themselves. So that way everybody is really reflecting our own triggers back to us. Step two is understanding others. How are our motivators different? What are our primary and secondary motivators? What are our team members' primary and secondary motivators? And how can I speak into their listening? So we actually call it fruit types. We call it the LAMP assessment, lychee, apple, mango, pear. And the reason we call it that is I've been speaking at HR conferences for decades now. And one of the things that we talk about is it's literally like one person speaking apple and another person speaking orange. Even though you and I, Ella, might be sitting here having a conversation in English, if my motivators and your motivators are misaligned, it's going to create friction. In fact, just last week, I was on a call for a panel that I'm going to be on for Deepak Chopra. So that's one of the reasons I was in town. He just had his Sages and Scientists Boston event, and I'm speaking on a panel for him in Mallorca next month at a private retreat that he's doing.
What about Jennifer's life? Like, can we just, that you are living the dream. Continue.
Yeah. And it's just like, so I feel lucky. You know, one of the secrets, Ella, I think that I get to do all this stuff, and it's really a get to. It's a privilege. It's an honor to get to be here with you, to travel around the world, is I teach people to look for miracles. That's it. Look for miracles in our lives. And then the more we can recognize the little miracles, like you texting me last night and me saying, oh, I'm in Boston. And you're like, oh, I'm in New York. Have fun in Boston. I'm like, I'm flying to New York tomorrow. Story of my life, though.
Yeah. And when did your intuition really kick in for you, and how did you notice that showing up?
So I always had it to some extent. And in the last 4 years, it's gone through the roof. Like, I can't even, the stories I could tell you of things that I've been able, it's not even intuition now, it's also precognition. I know about things before they're going to happen. I was literally sitting one day journaling. I'd packed up my apartment in Santa Monica. I was getting ready to travel the world for a year. And one day I just wrote, Dear Universe, is there any message, anything you want me to know today, blah, blah, blah. And this was before COVID, Ella. This was November 2019. My hand starts writing. This is before I've gotten to know Deepak and become friends and did all that stuff. And my hand starts writing. Millions of people are about to die. You're going to have to help. And I literally have this journal, and I just start writing, and tears are flowing down my face. And I'm like, what is even happening? Because I had never had anything like that happen. So I'd always had deep intuition of being with somebody and understanding, you know, different things about people. But that was next level. And then it happened again before Ukraine, and then it happened before Israel. And then this year, it really knocked me off my feet, quite frankly. I was on a call with my dad mid-January of this year, perfectly healthy as could be. It just had his workup. One day, middle of January this year, I look at my dad on FaceTime. He and my mom and I would FaceTime every day. And I knew he would die 30 days later. And that was like,
I just got chills.
It was, and I told my mom too. My mom and I are very close. And so my dad left the room, and I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, please forgive me. May I share something? And she said, of course, honey, you know, I love you. And I said, Dad's going to die in the next 30 days. And he was so healthy, Ella, that he went into the hospital on February 13th, and they sent him home with the flu after a CAT scan. And 48 hours later, he got rushed to the ER because it was a blood clot that wound up blocking his intestines and killing him. And the beautiful part about all that is I still am deeply connected. So a new gift I've discovered I have that I always do with my coaching clients is I've learned what I call soul talking, where I can literally be in the middle of a conversation with you or with a friend or a business colleague or a coaching client, and I can hear what somebody's limiting beliefs are if they're willing to have me tap in.
Oh, let's do it.
All right. Do you really want me to do this
Yeah,
real
let's do
time
it.
live? Okay.
Yeah, I've not. I feel like honestly, every opportunity is an opportunity to learn and grow. So if I can learn more about myself, I'm open to it.
Okay, cool. So let me just drop in then. Hello, do I have permission to connect? Yes. Hello, what is it you want to work on? Interesting. I heard something about relationships for you right now. Is there something going on for you with relationships?
Yes. I think a part of it is my dad and I went to Sedona. And really, for me, it was a personal want to get into a deeper relationship with him. And I think after that experience and him leaving, it's just been challenging being, over the other side of the world, being in a very high growth startup. It's hard to maintain a lot of deep relationships because, as you said, you're here, there, and everywhere. I kind of feel the same. And without having my home base, relationships have been a little bit of a struggle. So it's interesting because I just had a really rough weekend around that.
Yeah. Would you want to share about it?
It's more coming from a lens of like, sometimes I just like really miss my mom. And I think as a young adult that is so ambitious and driven, I've been working on more tapping into my feminine side, which means I'm feeling more emotions than I have ever done before. And I think regulating that just after that whole experience with my dad was like more challenging than normal.
Yeah. And your mom has passed?
No. She's just in Australia. So it's just like she's in a different time zone completely to New York. But it's just more of a thing of, I don't know, sometimes you just need like a hug from a family member. And I think I sometimes forget how fast paced my life is. And then when I come into a big city and then plans kind of change, it just kind of threw me off this weekend.
Yeah, so there's a couple things you can do. There's soul talking, which is the technique that I was just mentioning. And it's a very simple technique where you really breathe slowly and deeply through your heart. I use heart mass, heart focused breathing as a catalyst because it biologically puts your body in a state of what's known as coherence. So they've been studying this for 40 years. Brilliant research in science for anybody out there who wants to study that aspect of it. And when you do that, you breathe slowly and deeply. And this is a secret. This is a secret soul talking formula that I take people through. And you reach out once you're in that state of coherence. You've done that for a few minutes. You imagine reaching out from your heart to your mom's heart via a gossamer thread of connection. And then you almost imagine like knocking on the door of your mom's heart and saying, Mom, can we have a talk right now? Like, even if it's totally the opposite time of the world, because you're not having this conversation at the physical level, it's at the heart level. So you have a conversation, and if she agrees, the way I like to describe it to people is, in Avatar, how they connect with their animals. It's almost like, that beautiful intertwining and the connection of the heart threads. And then it's like a telephone line. You can literally have a conversation anytime, anywhere with somebody. I've taught this to business professionals. Actually, one of my best friends, Amy, was just with me in Boston. And I love one of her stories about a coaching client they were working with and taught a variation of this. This man on a Friday had been really angry with this kid who's bullying his kid. And he's like, I'm going to go give him a piece of my mind. So my friend Amy's coaching him, and she says, are you willing to try something? And he's so protective and Papa Bear over his kid. He said, anything, please. She said, so she taught him a variation of this. And I love that Amy and I both came up with this separately, but so many wonderful coaches do this variation of this technique. And so they taught him how to reach out to the soul of the little boy who is bullying their daughter. And so at the heart level on a Friday, no physical conversation took place. He reached out and he said, I need your help. You're really causing my son a lot of pain. Please, can you help and can you resolve this? And Monday morning, the little boy who was bullying their kid showed up at the door and apologized without any conversation ever having taken place.
Wow.
So I've taught people, I teach executives how to do it. I teach people who have lost loved ones how to do it. But the cool thing is, it's a great technique it's the Kabbalists call it, this is where I first learned the technique, is I've studied Kabbalah for about 12 years, and you can Google and find their version of it, which is called proactive confrontation. Ella, think about it. We could literally solve the world's problems and wars if we all just paused before we had those triggering conversations, or even if we just miss somebody, like you missing your mom, and we just reach out at the heart level and just say, hey, can we talk? And then if you talk, the proactive confrontation bit is, let's say you're about to have a conversation with a business partner or a potential client. You literally talk at the heart level first before you have the physical conversation, and then it primes and it makes the other person more receptive.
I love that. And I feel like tapping into your heart is such a key part in so many different aspects of business, because I have realized myself when I was younger and I was just on the go all the time, I forgot, as you said, the jerk, I forgot compassion. And I think building a team this time around, that has been on the forefront of my mind, and doing things that are a little bit alternate or, you know, unique in a business setting, but getting the ego to come down and just realizing it's just me and you. We both have triggers. We both have inner childs that will come up at times, but realizing that we're all of one and the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And that everybody is a reflection of us. Like, it's so beautiful when we realize. I was having a profound wisdom around that. Deepak was doing a lot of meditations when we were in Boston, and all of a sudden I could literally drop into the consciousness of everybody in the room and see that it's just different reflections of where we're at on our own journey, like a prism, and that everybody is a reflection of that. And one of the other things I used to teach a class called How to Deal with an Office A-Hole. And in that class, I would talk to people and say, listen, you're not dealing with an upset 55-year-old or 25-year-old or 32-year-old. You're dealing with an upset 4-year-old. And if we can literally see each other, and if we can see ourselves, so to take it back to your mom and the missing of your mom, my favorite secret for all relationships, whether it's romantic, friendship, family, business, do inner child work. It makes you the sexiest, most desirable, wonderful person, best friend you could be, because then you're not trying to take energy. Like when I do it every morning, I put my right hand or my left hand on my heart, my right hand on my abdomen, or you can do it however you prefer. And you either look at yourself or at that age in a picture, or you imagine yourself at whatever age you come up. And then you check in and you say, hey, you find out how they want to be addressed. My little inner child, she doesn't even like to be called little. I just got a little down. She's like, don't you dare. She's like,
literally.
Yeah, she actually prefers to only be called sweetheart. But if you call her sweetie, it's DEFCON 4. She is not going to have any of it. But when you talk to yourself, you just say sweetheart or buddy or however they want to be addressed. How are you feeling? And Ella, it boggles my mind every time. As a 43-year-old adult, I'll be sitting here and I'll be like, how are you feeling? And she'll be like, we're sad. And I'm like, we're sad? Shit, what are we sad about? And she'll be like, I was really hurt when blah, blah, blah happened. Now imagine most of us go through our whole lives and never do that sort of self-check-in. I also do it externally, where my husband and I, every night before bed, we say to each other, did I cause you pain today? And we actually look at, did we cause one another pain? And I do it like my girlfriends I was just traveling around with in Boston. I said to two of them last night, I said, ladies, did I cause you pain today? Because when we start to bring our conscious awareness, as my friend Arthur Samuel Joseph calls it, to the way we interact with ourselves and each other, then all of a sudden the vibration of our relationships gets elevated. If you look at David Hawkins' levels of consciousness, it's a great example of that.
I love that. I think that is so powerful, because how does that come up though for yourself when maybe something that they say triggers you? Like, how do you then go about working through that?
Yeah, so there's two ways to do it. There's proactively and there's reactively in the moment. I'm a big fan of proactively, so that's why every morning I do meditation, reflection, inner child work. But then there's the reactive version where you're real time in the moment. There was something that happened in the last 3 or 4 months. God bless my co-founder, Jules. I love him. We've been dear friends for 12 years. He's like a brother to me. And we're on a call with our attorney about something or other. And something happened and it was not like totally. And in the moment, old Jen from 10 years ago would have had a meltdown and would have fought with people and would have like gotten off the call or been argumentative. But in the moment, heart focused breathing saved me. So what I do is I use heart-focused breathing from HeartMath that you can do with your eyes open. They teach it to first responders, firefighters, astronauts, business people. So let's say that your significant other, your business partner, whomever, in my case, my business partner, says something that triggers you. When we've done the pre-work, when we've done the inner child work, the meditation, the stuff leading up to it, number one, that actually helps us to have access to our higher brain function and to quiet the amygdala. But in the moment, so number one, it prepares your consciousness so that way you can be proactive rather than reactive. But number two, when that happens, what's really happening at the physiological level is we have three parts to our brain. We have the lower part of the brain, which is the amygdala, the reptilian brain, which is fight or flight. And then you have the midbrain, which is the mammalian brain. Am I safe? Are you like me? The neocortex. And then you have the highest brain, which is the executive functioning, creative thinking, love, compassion, etc. What most people don't know, Ella, is that the higher parts of the brain can't function until the lower part of the brain feels safe. That's where we wind up getting triggered. So if in that moment you can do heart-focused breathing and you can regulate your nervous system and make that lower part of your brain, that reptilian brain, feel safe, then you regain access to your higher brain functions, and then you can have a compassionate conversation rather than a reactive one.
What does that heartfelt breathing look like?
Would you like me to teach it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So very simple. For the first time I'm going to teach you to do it. I'm going to tell you to do it with your eyes shut. And for those of you who are driving right now, you can do it with your eyes open, or if you're operating a vehicle. So go ahead and begin to focus your attention in the area of your heart or chest. Imagine that your breath is flowing in and out right through the center of your heart or chest. Breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual. Finding an easy rhythm that's comfortable for you. Continuing slow, deep, heart-focused breaths as though your heart itself is doing the breathing. And on the next inhalation, I invite you to breathe in calm. Perhaps you can connect to a time where you felt calm or bliss or ease. And I invite you to breathe in that feeling of calm right through the center of your heart or chest. And as you breathe out, you can imagine radiating and pulsing that calm to other people in the room, to people you're holding in your heart. Maybe it's a business colleague or your mom or dad. And again, breathing in, really feeling that calm. And breathing it out. Let's do that 2 more times. Breathing slowly and deeply right through the center of your heart or chest. And breathing out. And 1 more time, breathing in. And pulsing that calm out to the room. Whenever you're ready, you can wiggle your fingers and toes and open your eyes.
I love that. I was actually just sending love to my ex-business partner.
Love it. That's amazing.
Because don't ever move in with a business partner. It's a really bad idea.
Yes.
But I'm grateful for it because I would not be where I am today without the relationships that we met when we were on our journey together. But thank you for that. That was actually exactly what I needed. Yeah, I appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. And the great thing is, here's 2 little tips for everybody. Practice doing that every time you walk through a doorway. Use that as a catalyst so that way you start doing it proactively rather than reactively. And then it becomes an ingrained way of breathing. And what's a really cool scientific study that they did, they took 10 groups of 4 people, 3 of whom were trained in this technique, 1 of whom wasn't. In 100% of the trials that they did and anybody who replicated the study, the 4th person always gets into a state of coherence biologically and physically. So by you being coherent, you actually impact others around you. And there have been lesser done studies that show same thing with one-to-one. So if I come into a meeting, I'm in a state of coherence. you're naturally going to feel more psychologically safe and coherent. In fact, a lot of people, brilliant guy who's actually facilitating the panel that we're doing next month, he was telling me, he's like, before every board meeting, I would do it. Like, ran a $1 billion company. He's like, I would just drop in and I would invite the other executives to do it, because again, what you're doing is giving yourself access to your higher brain function. If we come in and we're trying to put out fires in our mind, we're not running the meeting. Our amygdala is running the meeting.
I'm curious, from an organizational standpoint, for teams, executives, managers, what are some check-ins that they should be doing? And I really want to dive into this because I think it's really interesting how your platform works and the thought that has gone into this.
Yeah, so it's very, very helpful. What I recommend to everybody, there was another great technique that's not even something I came up with, a wonderful woman who ran teams for a global organization. She said, imagine every time you get on a call with your team members, have them put a number in the chat. 5 means you're like at peak performance. 0 means you have nothing to give, and you don't have to explain it, but you can just put that in the chat. So I'm a big fan of doing that, of doing heart-focused breathing before every call. And then when you understand how other people are motivated, rather than getting angry, like in some cases, what we've started to see is that high apples, like the 39, 37 apples, which is almost as high as you can get on our scale, are a no first before they're a yes. Now, the final version of our algorithm isn't out yet, but later iterations of it, it'll actually tell you that in the report. Is this person a no before they're a yes? Imagine you get on a call with somebody, you're a business partner, co-founder, or even a client. Wouldn't it be helpful to know if they were a no first before they're a yes? Because then you wouldn't have to take the no personally. You could just say, oh, okay, that's just how they're motivated. They're a no first before they're a yes. It doesn't mean they're a no forever. It just means they're a no first. And the reason high apples are often a no first is they don't have enough information and time. So, for example, years ago when I first started developing this all in my head, I remember there was a general counsel I was recruiting for a startup tech company in the Beverly Hills area. And I knew right away this guy was a no first before he was a yes, that he was what I would consider on our current scale a high apple. And so when we went to give the guy the offer, I proactively told the client, I said, listen, he's going to come back to us with 100 questions. He's going to need at least a week to consider it. And if you put 1 ounce of pressure on him, you know those old recruiter tactics, give me an answer by tomorrow or the offer is not good.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with that, it's asinine. That only works for one of the 4 types. Most of the types that doesn't work for. So if you're not speaking the same language as the person, it's going to lead to what we call accidental adversarial relationships. So if we can proactively do heart-focused breathing, check in and see how other people are feeling. Where are people at? Whether you ask it externally, whether people drop a number in a chat, and then cultivate compassion for yourself. Because like that golden triangle of connection I talked about, you literally cannot connect in a deep and meaningful way with others if you don't first have that connection to yourself.
Yeah, I feel that. I think what's really interesting is at Dealflow Xchange, we support raising capital with not taking anything of the upside. From, what you're saying, I think it's really interesting to use from a raising capital standpoint, which is why you're here, in New York today. How do you use this? And let's say that you're meeting someone you've never met before. Let's say they're a VC. How could you use this formula that you're saying to kind of be able to figure out different people's motivations from a raising capital standpoint?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. My husband has a investment company and they're using it for all their portfolio companies and stuff to see how the co-founders match and all of that.
I love that.
I know. So in the same way of cold reading, you can often tell somebody's primary motivator just by how they engage. Sometimes if somebody is very, it's not always, like you can have a high mango, which is motivated by fun, who might be an introvert. So just because you're high in one of the motivators doesn't make you an introvert or an extrovert. But let's say I'm talking to somebody tonight, for example. I'm going to be paying attention to social cues, to how they hold themselves. I'm going to be noticing if I tell somebody something, how many follow-up questions do they ask? If they ask several follow-up questions, then that's going to give me a pretty good indication that they might be a higher apple on our scale, which is motivated by information. Somebody like me, for example, who's a high lychee or lychee, depending on how you prefer. My husband and I argue that all the time. He's like, it's lychee, not lychee. I was like, it's lychee. It's like arbitrary, right? But like who's a high lychee or lychee is I'm very motivated by getting shit done and accomplishing. You'll know when you're in a conversation with somebody like me, which a lot of VCs are, but they can also be very high apples or a combo of the two. is a high lychee is going to like down dirty. They might even talk at a faster pace. They might cut you off in the middle of a conversation, not because they're trying to be obstinate or a jerk, just because their brain works and they like to bam, bam, bam. Like
that's me.
Yeah, I had a
so
feeling.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I had a feeling that would be you. And the funniest thing is, I had a friend of mine who is the head of HR for Gucci worldwide, and she's like, "Oh my God, Jen, you need to apply this in onboarding." I saw this happen all the time when people would get hired at companies. There are 4 main types we measure, not including the assertiveness scale: get shit done, other people's needs, facts, and fun. How you would onboard each of those people, depending on how big their primary is, totally different. If you're onboarding you or me, give it to me down and dirty in 30 seconds. Don't give me any paperwork and do not bog me down with details.
Yes.
But that would be the worst nightmare for a high apple.
So true.
Yes. Versus somebody who's motivated by fun, you're going to want social engagement or things that can like excite them and engage them. Versus somebody who's motivated by other people's needs, they're going to need a sense of belonging. Who can they feel intimate with and feel like they have a confidant right off the bat, or be a confidant to somebody else? You would set up all 4 of those people differently.
I love that. So your husband with portfolio companies, as an organization, how are you rolling these out? Are people filling out information and then it's coming back to them fed in a kind of a visual manner, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's called om.app, which is the website, and then /survey. So we have, like, for example, when I was doing it for the folks on Necker or the mastermind I was a part of, if it's not set up for a specific company, like my husband's company or one of our other clients, then it just gets dumped into our repository of everybody who's ever answered it. And then we can tell you there'll be a version of it in November that will allow the B2C side where anybody can go on and answer, and then you'll get 1 free match with a friend where you can say, oh, I want to see how my friend and I match, because everybody's been begging us for that. So we just hadn't developed it yet. But right now, like, for example, with my husband's company or one of the other clients we work with, like outsourcing companies, coaches, consultants, we actually white label the website to look like their website, but then we embed our survey so they don't even know it's an OptiMatch survey. All you do is you just go to our client's website, you input it, it automatically drops them into what we call a partner portal, and then people can do matching in there. So we can match teams of up to 7 people, or for example, with a lot of the communities we work with, like we have an 8,000 person community who's using our software to match its members. We've had a lot of interest in the community space. Then what that does is anybody who's ever answered it, it automatically tells you who your top 10 matches are. And that's how I was kind of creating the Necker dates or the Orlando Playscape dates, is just seeing who matched best with whom. And it's been so much fun just to watch people play together.
That's so incredible. So as an organization, could you then use your technology to like support you building out org charts?
Absolutely. That's what we do with any of the CEOs that I coach. We use it for that. We can also use it to predict culture. Like, it was super fun. So you can use it to predict culture of companies. Actually, a tech company, I coached their CEO out of New York. His whole team, which is very highly unusual, especially for tech and what we've seen, is all high pair. Pairs are motivated by other people's needs. So literally almost every person he's hired is very motivated by other people's needs.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I honestly am so fascinated, and I can't wait for Portugal. Like, the fact that we got to connect just made me so happy, because I'm like, there was a reason why Reef connected us, and I'm really just excited to, you know, what's funny is Portugal's actually been on my like vision board for a very long time. So as soon as you said it, I booked a flight that day, because I'm like, it's just meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to come stay with us. We'll throw a party in your honor. I was already even talking to Carl. A friend of mine, Carl, is throwing a private cruise thing out of Portugal. So Ella's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Party at my house the day before the cruise.
Anyone who's in Portugal in November, let us know.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Ella. I'm so glad that it worked out. And may everybody out there, all of your listeners, may they all experience more synchronicities and better understanding of themselves and others.
Yeah.